Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're zooming in from around the world. My name is Doug Bruhnke. I'm the founder and CEO of Global Chamber. We are the global tribe. We are all of the folks, the trusted folks that are professional and ethical and the folks that you can trust to build your business. And we have some of those here today. Really pleased to have a really important conversation about leadership. It's certainly focusing in to some extent on women in leadership, but it also talks to men and men's responsibility in the game. It's not women just advancing on their own. It's us working together, men and women, to build companies, to build success, to build diversity, and ultimately to build all of the things that are important for a business: profit and sensitivity to markets and adjusting businesses to be successful around the world. And that takes a village. And so today we have a great village led by the remarkable Ericha Hartz-reesmarx. Ericha is based out of Charlotte, but Reesmarx is a global company. They have facilities all over the world. She's incredible. She, just before we got started here, was apologizing for her detailed emails, which works very well when you're pulling together events like this and you're trying to get anything done, right? She's so well organized, as everyone at Reesmarx, I'm sure, also appreciates. So Ericha, thank you for guiding us today. She's going to be taking it from here, and she's got some great speakers. I'm sure you'll enjoy it. Put in your questions in the box. Along the way, we'll have time at the end for questions, and all along the way. And Ericha, take it from here. Thanks for pulling this together.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for the kind words. I feel like we should get on calls every single day. That was fantastic. Thank you everybody for listening in. To jump right into it, Doug went over really perfectly what we want to accomplish with this call is that, you know, there's a lot of unsaid things in the workforce. And one of the biggest things that I think I don't hear enough is executive individuals taking into consideration men and women both working together, which is sort of the foundation of so many different companies, because that's the realistic truth, that men and women are both in the workforce. And over the past 30 years, women have worked so hard to get themselves there. So we have 4 amazing speakers. I'm so grateful to have them on. We have Christina Tomasco. She is an owner of Urgenci that does a project and consulting contractual basis type of recruitment. They're actually an arm of Reesmarx. We have Lynn, who is an individual that is in a man's dominated industry, and she is an executive that has worked her butt off to get to where she is and is extremely well respected in that industry. We have Suzy Zeng, who is a business owner, a true executive when it comes to it, both as an individual, as a woman, and also as being very culturally knowledgeable, as she's originally from China. So she's going to have a really great perspective as well. And then we have Jeff Olsen, who has a really cool story to tell, which I am going to leave to him, but he was raised by an amazing woman who has quite a background professionally and just as an individual woman, and he's going to be able to go through that. So to jump right into it, though, and tell you where this thought process came from, I am a millennial woman in the sort of, I guess, grand scheme of business industry. And I find myself very often overthinking every step I make, every decision I make, and coming to points where I'm just really questioning where my thought process is and where I'm going to be. And I want to lean on individuals that have been in this industry for years, that have seen obstacles, struggles, strengths, successes, and learn from that and sort of guide my strength and my journey from learning who already went through it and make my life a little bit easier and more transparent on the way. So that's one of the reasons that we got this together, as well as I came from a recruitment side. So it was very often that when I was talking to very similar profiles, one being a man, one being a woman, I would notice that there were differences. Women were less eager to look for roles that didn't they didn't have every skill that aligned with the job description, so they pulled themselves out of processes, as well as it was a lot harder of a conversation to ask for what they were looking for compensation-wise. Very nervous to ask for more, very open to being driven towards an opportunity as opposed to a pay raise. Now, men were very eager, very driven to saying, yep, I can solve that. I'll figure that out in the role. I know generally what I can do. I want a 10 to 20% increase. And that was just so enlightening to me. It was so surprising that there were such major differences between men and women when they're both were capable of doing the exact same job to the exact same level. So it starts a conversation of saying, why are there differences and why women might bring something a little bit different than what men bring, and vice versa. So that is the foundation of where this came from. And I'm going to stop talking because I am not the specialist on this and I want to learn from every speaker here. So I'm going to introduce sort of right before they speak where they're going to be going about it. But the first person to speak is Christina Tomasco. I love Christina. She is somebody that I idolize, as well as she's been a mentor to me. And she's going to be focusing on men and women bonding in the workplace, as there has been for years and years general areas that you're supposed to do bonding in, of whether that be sports or food, and women approach these situations very differently. So I want to hear Christina's sort of solution and what she's found successful in when it comes to men and women bonding in the workplace and outside of the workplace.
Well, thank you, Erica. I'm very excited to be here today, and hope that some of my, I guess, experience, I don't want to call it wisdom, that would say I'm too old, but will help someone as they go on their journey through their career. So I have worked at small businesses, Fortune 50 companies, kind of the whole gamut. And one thing that I have really, that I've really noticed working in male-dominated roles is that men and women really think differently. And that's really what Erica was trying to put apart, is that as we approach things, we think differently. So basically, with that being said, what I really try to do is look for what's a common ground. How can I or other women get into a position where you have the ability to understand how men think and how we think, and how to marry that together. One thing that I have really focused on is how sports actually has been a gateway for me personally to help with jumpstarting my career, but also creating bonds with coworkers. So it transcends both. It's in the culture, but as well as how you perform. So it's kind of real simple. I mean, we really kind of all know that there are things that sports can kind of drive. Stress relief, keep us fit and healthy. But the reality is that sports can actually help you land that dream job of yours. It can boost your presence as you're in meetings, as you're talking to clients. So we're going to kind of talk about a few ways that you might be able to leverage sports in the workplace to actually make that transition. Women today are actually succeeding more and more in traditionally male-dominated roles. And I really feel that that is contributed to the confidence that comes with relating to colleagues. And really, my experience, and again, we'll go back to the sports because we're on here, is that sports is actually a really large component of our upbringing that allows us to gain confidence, whether that be male or female. And that really drives into how we work and how we manage ourselves. This is kind of an interesting stat. So there are about a survey of about 75 Fortune 500 companies at the EVP level. It showed that 95% of those executives played a sport, whether it be in high school or college, or still play one. The key to that is that, what does that mean? How does that transcend into how the EVPs work, or how we all work? So through sports, you have the ability, and you really are, in most cases, working in teams, but you may not be on a team sport. It could be swimming, but you are still part of a team. So you come out with how to work with teams. You get some grit. You really can just really understand, where are we going? What are we doing here? The ability to communicate to your team members, to your coaches, to the other team. being able to adapt to different situations, because as you know, in sports, you can't always tell what your opponent is doing. You have to be able to react. Being on time, working within time frames, persevering through to the end. When things are looking bleak, you really have to make sure that you're taking that over the finish line. Strategic planning, and part of my career has been in strategic planning, and that the sports analogies that have gone through there have been just significant, and I'll get into those in a little bit. But I think a real big thing is, one, the ability to win and lose. There are no points for participation, and we have to be able to suck it up when we lose and celebrate when we win. So that really all just drives through the confidence that we have. So this is actually something that I kind of came out yesterday as we were talking as a group. So society has really looked at men as being the forefront of organized sports. And that's really been the case until the 1970s. So now it's really transparent to the millennials. I mean, you've all been in a situation where everyone has been able to play sports. And that wasn't always the case years ago. So, things that you can do, even if you didn't start as playing in a sport, but just remain active. Sports are not just organized sports. They can be running, biking, anything that can make you feel physically fit, and heighten your awareness and push yourself. So it's not just about pushing teammates, but it's pushing yourself. And it's just really from an employer's perspective, people that are active or participate in sports, they bring a lot of skills to the table that just help to make you successful. But you also have things like fewer sick days. People are less prone to health issues. So it really makes you more appealing as an employee, actually. So playing sports can really help you do a lot of things like staying fit and managing your stress. Stress is something that is very heightened in a lot of jobs, and especially today. It can also get you the job you want, and you can get to the point where you're more successful because of that. And then a big advantage is that because of sports, you can actually learn from your colleagues how they react to certain situations. Are they a team player? Are they not? And bring that into your fold, because you have to deal with your coworkers on an individual basis as well as part of the teams. So one thing we can do, especially as a female, is don't fall the victim as to being on the sidelines. Use your knowledge in sports and be there. Engage in the conversation. Taking clues, and this is just really something as simple, just, the water cooler talk. What's going on? What sports season are we in? Brush up on your facts. Was the Stanley Cup the other night? Oh, what's the Stanley Cup? I don't know. Well, it's hockey. What were the scores? Maybe some players' names. You don't need to know it all, but just kind of understand what's going on. And one thing that I've really found being in male-dominated boardrooms is that there are a lot of sports references in your meetings. Real simple one that I'm sure you have, probably have heard is calling an audible. Know what that means. When you call an audible, you got to stop, play, and you're going to regroup. That's key. That's really critical when you're looking at your strategic planning. I have a bunch of them here, but as you go down, things like down to the wire. So the clock's almost out. You got to get things done. Don't drop the ball, or this is a slam dunk. Those are things that you can really just kind of understand, like, what does that mean? And in addition to the statement, it's we have to rally together. We've got to be able to carry it through. Companies also are really, whether you think about it or not, the corporate culture is actually weaved with sports. And as you look at it, just the idea is that you can't win if you don't score. So you just can't sit back and be complacent. Separation is in the preparation. So you have to practice. You have to coach. You have to be a teamwork. Teamwork makes dream work. So you got to be ready for all conditions, and really you have to own it. And those are all things that come through in sports, but they really show through in what we do in our day-to-day in the workplace. So really, beyond developing a rapport and listening to clues of what's going on with your teams and colleagues, you want to look at how do they respond? How do they respond to victories and defeats? What does that mean? How do you then have to adapt to motivate your teams to get what you need to get done? When it comes to using sports in business, women don't have to be experts. So you don't need to know everything, but you need to know enough to use it to take it to your advantage. 50% of Americans are sports fans, male and female. So if you can talk some sports, you've got access to that 50% of America. So that can help in numerous ways. You might have to work a little bit harder than most people, or your counterparts, really, because of not having the sports as available. But the key is just learn it. It's just like anything else. You don't actually have to have played it, but learn it. And that's really what I have to say today, and just really wanted to drive home the fact that sports are an incredible part of our daily lives, whether it be personal or to help us in a successful career. Thanks, and I look forward to hearing what my other colleagues have to say.
Yeah, that was awesome. Thank you so much, Christina. And I think what was really great that you touched on is the fact that all of the facts that you provided, all of the details, they're not gender specific. And when it comes to building relationships, whether you're male, female, whatever sort of you identify as, regardless, relationships take work. They take that effort. So as much as you would expect somebody else to learn about your interests, learn about somebody else's interests. And that's a great way to bond. And sports it opens up so many different opportunities of conversations, as well as it really, the foundation of sports breaks down what the work environment is like. And it is across the board sort of the same. So that was fantastic. Thank you so much, Christina, for going over that. Next, we have Suzy to speak, and Suzy is going to be going over climbing the corporate ladder, her experiences, maybe some takeaways that she could say, if I knew this now. I think that was something that you had mentioned to me. And then she's also going to go through strengths of women in the workplace, which is it's talked about so little of the strengths. I think it's more talked about, the things that we don't have that are in comparison to men, or, sort of the negatives in that way. So she's going to be focusing on the strengths, and I'm excited to hear not only about her career, but also what she finds as strengthful pieces of women in the workplace. So go ahead.
Thank you, Erica. This is so fantastic actually get to speak with you and to be with so many amazing panelists. I love to share what I have learned over 25 years in the corporate world. So I worked for companies like Kraft Foods and PepsiCo's, General Mills, and White Wave Foods. And so primarily, I was trained as a food scientist and a nutritionist, and I figured out a way to rise above to go get different leadership roles. And then I got into business, market development, a new business, etc. So, and now I own a couple of businesses. So if I look back, I was like, gosh, Erica, you asked a great question. What I wish I've learned, or somebody had told me, trust me, I've had so many moments like that throughout my careers, so many aha moments, not just because I come from a different cultural background, and China, and also I had to learn that I'm a people of color, for example, right? I did not know that, but also to be a leader, a women leader in the corporate. And I loved what Christina talked about, the relationship building. And that is absolutely a given. It's so important. Now I'm gonna go a little bit different, focus on three biggest learning besides relationship building. And so the first one, to Erica's point, is going to be play out strength. And I really cannot emphasize enough about that. So early in my career, I thought so much about what I'm not good at it. And you try to focus so much energy on the things that I may never be good at it, or I'm actually not aware of what I'm good at it. So I really think the point is not about ignoring things that we're not necessarily so super good at it, but be aware of it. But more importantly, focus our energy in the positive things that we bring to the table. So that is something I really think is the mindset. It's like every day, every morning, literally look in the mirror and say, I'm good at this. And this is what I bring to the table. And truly know your skills, your thinking, your energy, your mindset, all of those are unique about ourselves. And I don't know if you are familiar with a book called Strength Finder by Tom Rath. And it really talks about skills, specifically our thinking, what we're good at it. And that is something continue to really go detailed to truly kind of analyze what we're good at it. And then that's going to change how we show up in the workplace. Trust me, you're going to walk differently without the high heels. So you're going to still walk like 6 feet tall. Because men don't necessarily understand, I shouldn't generate that, but a lot of people don't understand what's behind, the stigmas behind our women's success. A lot of time we think that, hey, maybe, we just get luck, right? So, but we all know that we work so hard, working hard, at least in what I was taught by my mom and my grandpa, is like, this is a given, you have to work hard. But is that enough? Then we women, we think differently, we do things differently. We always do our due diligence, right? So, but to bring that up, make people well aware that we work hard for what we earned. So we use the word earned, so it's not a given. We bring that awareness to people, doesn't mean that we're whining about, crying about what we are, how we came up to the position, rather to know that, hey, this doesn't come easy for us. So I always use the words like, for everything I earned, I have to work twice as hard. And take that as a positive thing. So we're not whining about it. So I would say that is the focus on strength. Be truly know who we are, what do we bring to the table, and then embrace it. The second point I learned, it's about focus on holistic well-being. Don't just, this is work. Look at life as a whole. And think about, we as women, we wear many hats the older we get, right? We're the mom, we're the career woman, we're the wife, and we have different hats we're wearing. And don't forget that. We don't just show up to work and then now all of a sudden we act like a man, right? So I really think it's really important to look at a holistic well-being, take care of ourselves first, and to make sure we are clear on our identity. And it is important because our workforce, our team members all look up upon us as a role model. If we really just, work to death and ignore the work-life balance, ignore of ourself, the well-being of ourselves, guess what? What kind of role model we set for our team? And that means that's the only way to get through it, to climb the corporate ladder. It's not the case at all. There's an analogy, right? You heard about you on the airplane. If the mask drop, you got to put a mask on yourself first before you take care of others. So you got to take care of yourself and to truly embrace the holistic well-being. And I'm sure this pandemic made people even more of the whole holistic well-being, the wellness ourselves, the importance of a relationship. And for me, I have identified 3 areas for holistic well-being that is absolutely crucial for my own well-being. Number 1 is health. I got to take care of my health. And then number 2 is my connections with other people, with my family, with spiritual, right? And then lastly is the financial well-being, so that we don't just work for money. We really bring our whole self to work, that people can get the best of us. The last point I want to make is about women help women get a mentor, and really find a coach, a champion who really care about us. So really the career, chances are we're not gonna make all the way up on our own. That's what I learned. I thought I work hard enough, I should be able to, my results shows, right? So I should be able to up there. No, we gotta have that relationship. We gotta make sure that when there's somebody actually show their way, and there's preferably another women leader. So women help women leaders, I'm big on that. And I'm trying to do the same thing for other young women leaders in my organization and other people as well. So I really think that Doug, Global Chamber, Ericha are doing the same thing. Thank you for organizing this.
Thank you so much, Suzy. Something that you said of you can't take care of others until you take care of yourself. I feel like it's something that I've heard before, but I've never heard related to a work environment. And that is incredibly meaningful, of just saying, if you're going to work so hard to be in so many different other places, how are you going to take care of yourself appropriately, your role appropriately, and get to where you want to go? And I don't know if that's a woman characteristic. I know I can speak for myself and say that, I'm being a new mom. Sometimes my brain is trying to decide how to separate work life and mom life, when realistically, I think that they could probably be handled at the same time, of just finding, clear on my identity, as you said. So that's fantastic. Thank you so much for speaking, and what wonderful points. So next we're going to transition to Jeff Olsen. He, like I said, I sort of foreshadowed what he was going to be speaking on, but he has an incredible career on his own. But also he comes from an environment where his mom was working when a lot of mothers were not working. And so he saw a strong, independent woman that was fighting a lot of challenges that I will never have to say that I have to fight. And for that, I, as a woman and as a person, am so grateful for the women that did that. So hearing from not only a male perspective, but also a son's perspective of how he saw that, and how now he views women in the workplace, and what he views for his children, and everything like that. So take it away, Jeff.
Thank you very much. I'm incredibly honored to be here this afternoon, this morning. So thank you for inviting me. To your point, just to kind of get into it, I was a kid in the 70s and the 80s, and my mother was a working mom and part of a team between my mom and my dad. And they started out, very simply in the Midwest and worked their way across the country, and ended up landing in the realm of politics and journalism in DC Metro in the 70s through the early 80s. And growing up in that era with her and watching her expand and grow both professionally and in every other way was life-changing, because in the 70s and the 80s the world was an entirely different place, obviously. So she ended up being the assistant editor for a publication, and my father was a politician on Capitol Hill, and the two of them made a very interesting pair. And the way she traveled and what she did and what she accomplished was simply amazing. And having been able to sit and observe and be raised in that arena and that environment definitely colored and shaped, not only my perception of the world, but the way that I interact with it and the way I've raised my children and the way I do business in the world as well. Um, the the things that stick out in my mind coming up with my mother are the way that she worked as a team with not only my father but with also all of the resources around her. You know, being in a highly charged, very male driven, you know, overtly political, seeing as it was, you know, DC metro area environment, watching her use her social and, you know, political connections, if you will, but also kind of watching her strategize and picking her battles, and but sticking to her guns in the way that she was always very good at knowing what she was good at and sticking to her strengths, to some of the points that have been made earlier by both Christina and Suzy, in knowing what she was very strong at and not stopping. The woman does not stop ever, you know. And then the adversity that she came across with, you know, in that male driven environment where, you know, being able to resolve conflict both, you know, amicably or, you know, in an aggressive fashion if need be. But and the ERA movement being highly involved with Gloria Steinem and the whole Equal Rights Amendment movement and all that. I remember as a kid, you know, going to events, meeting all kinds of people with her, putting up posters and bumper stickers, and just growing up in that environment. So it was life-changing, and it also was interesting to see the work that was involved then and what it's evolved to now. And it's amazing. It's nothing short of amazing. So the other thing that I've noticed was, you know, because of that perspective that I was given by my mom and by being raised by a woman who was completely driven, was an awareness that I was raised in an environment where there was no difference. You know, my mom and my dad were both very powerful people in their own ways, and they worked together with each other to make that happen. And I think that teamwork play, to Christina's point, you know, from a sports perspective, is very important. It's a way that you can relate with each other and utilize each other's strengths and talents. And it's not a male female thing. It's a teamwork thing. You're on a team. It's got nothing to do with whether you're male or female or whatever. It has to do with what you're good at, and can you hold your end down? Can you stay in your lane? Can you handle your business? And, you know, it afforded me a very interesting perspective. And the relationships that you have as you come up with different people inside the world and inside business are colored by this. And some of my best colleagues over the years and have become very good friends they've always been women. They've always been women of power who can take care of themselves and their business, and they allow this perspective into the world that's, to me, is very different. It's complementary, and it's added a lot to, you know, my experience and the way I've conducted my business and raised my children. And then the last thing I would like to speak about would be, you know, kind of where we came from and growing up in that environment with my mom and having spoken to her over the weekend, and, you know, where we are now with the advents of, you know, all the change that, you know, she's instigated, that the women on this panel have instigated, that, you know, other people in the world have instigated over the last 50 years, is now we've kind of paved the road for our daughters. Ericha, you know, you are in a very interesting and very, you know, empowered position to look at the world from a place of equality, a place of perspective, and be able to forge ahead and create something very cool. So it's going to be interesting to see what the next chapter in all this is. So
Yeah,
And back to
absolutely.
your.
Yeah, and what's really cool about your perspective is that you got to witness something before other people did. I was raised in an environment where my dad was medically injured, and he had to stay home. He was medically retired, and my mom went to work. And so I grew up different from my three sisters, where my sisters were more raised by my mother and I was more so raised by my father. And so I think that's a lot of stories for millennials and the generations after, is that a lot of people were raised by mothers working, but somebody that is in your part of your career and during that time being raised by a woman that was making a road for us to just sort of fly through is such a wonderful perspective. And you know, it's cool to hear how you speak about everything, because you have such a unique perspective. Especially, I mean, every year it changes, right? Every decade it changes for everybody. So for you to be able to witness that in the time that you did is so intriguing. You know, I hope to learn more and more from you through, you know, through you, from your mother, as well as who you are as a person, a businessman, and interacting with businesswomen. So that's awesome. Thank you so much,
Thank
Jeff.
you.
Now we have Lynn Bamford, who's going to speak. She is nothing short of amazing. She is a woman that's paving a road in an industry that's still extremely male dominated. And she is going to be speaking towards handling yourself in the workplace, which I think is really intriguing for me specifically, just sort of understanding the routes that she took and her whole perception of it. So Lynn, please take over.
Okay, thanks, Erica, and welcome to everyone on the phone. I want to say it's clearly my pleasure to have a few minutes to share some of my experiences. I think I will echo some of the points that have been made by the three speakers before me and maybe build on them just a bit. So I've been working for 35 years. 30 of those years have been essentially with the same company. 30 years ago, I worked for a small company that was acquired, which was then subsequently acquired 2 more times. At this point, we convinced the parent company to divest our division, and that's how I became part of Curtiss-Wright, which is where I currently work. As part of Curtiss-Wright, I have led the acquisition of over 10 companies around the world and worked directly to integrate them into Curtiss-Wright. I wanted to open with this history, as my experience as a leader has been shaped through many engagements with many different leadership teams that I've both joined and developed, as well as leadership teams that I have integrated into my company. From all these engagements, I have learned a variety of principles that can guide you as a team member or a leader to try and create the best outcome in any situation. But the first of these is very simple. Don't assume. Don't assume a variety of things, but first and foremost, as a woman, don't assume anyone sees you as anything other than a valued team member. Start all engagements with an assumption that you will be measured by your work product only. Yes, some people will have a bias, but it's getting rarer, as we've heard from some of the prior speakers. And you can potentially change that bias in a person. If not, you'll find ways to work around that person. One story that happened to me early on in my careers, through one of the times the company I worked for was being acquired, the leadership team of that company was sitting around the table with a few of the people from the acquirer company. And the president of that company was speaking to our president, which I worked for. And several times he kept saying, well, what is her background and qualifications to run? I ran the engineering division and our product development team. And after about the 3rd time, he was asking my boss what her qualifications were. I popped up and said, I'm her, my name is Lynn, and I'm happy to talk to you about my background. I think the guy was actually completely shocked, as it was as he did not see me, which was the first time that had ever happened to me. Over the next years, I had fine professional engagements with him, and my career continued to flourish. And years down the road, he tried to recruit me away to run a company he had acquired. I do realize this is a pretty softball story of a bias, and there can be others that are harder to overcome. But when you sense bias, look for ways to break it down. Don't dig in first. Other lessons that I've learned from my engagement with teams I have worked with over the years that will create strong teams and bring the best outcomes and create great outcomes is something that I think, as a woman, to just be thoughtful about. Praise and give credit equally to men and women. Don't be biased in your own actions. Be open to learn and teach men and women equally. Again, don't shy away from giving praise to men or asking to learn from men. Just approach everything on an equal footing. Ask lots of questions. Don't pretend you don't understand and that you understand things that you don't. And in general, just be curious and learn how others think in situations. Lean forward in conversations. I think that's something that's been mentioned prior to me. Put forward your ideas and be part of the conversation. And someone may shoot down an idea. That's okay. Don't make it personal. Brush it off and get back in there. I would also echo Christina's comments about bonding. So I think she did a great job, and I love the sports analogy. And that has really worked for me in my career as ways to open up, a friendly way of a relationship with people that I've worked with. On the flip side, show a bit of grit from time to time. I know there can be a perspective or a thought that this will have a different interpretation when coming from a woman other than a man. But if you do the things I've just talked about, my experience is it will simply reflect your determination to lead your team to the best outcome. Remember the principles of having a tough conversation. Be direct. And as a woman, don't be apologetic for questioning or challenging a decision or approach to a situation. Be specific with facts that lead you to a different conclusion on the best path forward. Offer solutions or a path to find solutions. Make sure you check your emotions and your language, and lean forward in the conversation to make your points, but also listen. With all that said, I do also definitely believe that as you go through your career, you must lead as an authentic leader. It would be exhausting to try and put on a facade or carry on day after day, month after month, acting in ways that you think is what the workplace wants and is not your own personal style. I think you can do all those above things with whatever your own personal style is and how you carry yourself. There are some characteristics that I think are frequently, not always, more innate to women that can be real strengths in the workplace. So, and again, in being authentic, leverage those strengths that are who you are. Be empathetic. Take advantage of our ability to multitask. Enjoy and promote teamwork. And check your ego. Be humble. I think that this can really facilitate better exchanges around challenging assumptions and rationale for conclusions, and really help your teams find better directions, and is something that you can set an example for that will open the door for the rest of your team to act in a similar manner. The bottom line is hard, consistent work will be noticed and rewarded. Work is demanding in this day and age, and in the end, people want to work with people who produce a great work product. I really believe this and have seen this true over the years in different industries and different geographies. One story around this is, throughout my career, I've traveled around the globe and have worked with a worldwide customer base. Two places I observed much of what I've talked about are India and Turkey. I must say that years ago, when I had my first engagements, these might have been places I went into not assuming many of the points that have shaped my strong belief about consistent hard work being recognized and rewarded. What I saw there was women fully engaged in the workplace, being treated as equals, and it was really eye-opening to me, and it was a reminder about not assuming. Coupling hard work with all the things that I've mentioned, I believe will grow your career as you desire. Another topic I just wanted to touch on, which relates back to your personal desire for upward mobility, is consider if your personal situation would allow you to move locations or plants within your company. In many companies, the willingness to move locations can be a real door opener for advancement. If you are open to move, let your employer know this is important. And I will close with the point of back to not assuming. My husband and I moved 2 years ago so that I could move to our corporate office. My husband is now retired and really supports me so I can focus on work. So I really want to emphasize, don't assume that your family won't support you. Don't assume your children won't support you. Don't assume your coworkers won't just respect you for the work you bring. And that was really what I wanted to share today. Thank you.
That was awesome. Thank you so much, Lynn. Probably one of the biggest things that would be my takeaway is that, you know, hard work is hard work, right? And what you described is that, you know, you have to take every day as it is work and not take things personally, which I think naturally, I don't know if that's more of a me thing or a woman thing or anything, but I sometimes take things so much to heart that I forget that it's not personal. It is work, and getting ourselves out of that mindset and coming together and bonding with the men and understanding that things are not on that personal level is something to really learn from and continuously try to grow. And I think that's something that I will definitely take away from this. So thank you every single speaker that spoke, from Christina, Suzy, Jeff, Lynn. You guys did, you know, fantastic, not only bringing to light a lot of topics that I think are very hard topics to talk on and express, but you guys did it so perfectly that I hope every listener took something away from it, as I know I did. We're going to do a Q&A part of this Globinar now, and it's going to be targeted questions just because I know that we have some questions that have rolled in, but what we're going to do with those questions is we're going to answer them on a blog later. Global Chamber will post. If you want to target questions specifically to speakers, feel free to keep filling that in, and we'll make sure that each of the speaker answers the questions and can get posted for your review after, and that will also be on the Reesmarx website as well. But to specifically ask some questions that I think popped up as I was listening, as well as are just sort of on my mind being a millennial female in the workplace, is I'll start with Lynn. So Lynn, I know you are a mother, as you just expressed towards the end, as well as a wife, and you touched on a little bit, but your husband did relocate and further push your career and put that as a priority, which I think is fantastic, and I think not spoken about as much as it should be, of plenty of husbands and men and partners that put their partner before them, and it doesn't come down to gender, and it doesn't come down to a lot of things. But you as a mother and a wife, do you feel that your position being those two things, being a mother and wife, has affected your becoming an executive? Has it prolonged it? Has it expedited it? What would you say? Does it have any sort of bearing on it?
Sure. I think, you know, who you are as a person. First, thank you for the question. I should say that before I jump in. I think, you know, it, kind of maybe the way Suzy talked about it, we are whole people, and you are a woman and you are a mother. I think there's things you do and the way you engage in the workplace that, you know, when you're at work, making work be a priority and focusing, but it also gives you a touch point with your colleagues that, you know, if there's something going on at home, you know, with a child and you have a child, it can be a point that it can give you some common ground. You know, it's hard to say whether, you know, it's sped up or slowed down my pace of developing my career, because I can only know the experiences I have. I never have felt passed over for anything because I was a woman or people worried that I would be distracted. Likewise, though, I traveled heavily all throughout my career, even when my children were young. And so I leaned into my job. And, you know, sometimes that was hard at home, and I wouldn't sugarcoat that. I have two great children that I think, I hear of, you know, Jeff speaking, and I think of the way my son is entering the work experience, and I think of, you know, my experience and how that has infected him, and my daughter's determination to succeed. But it does come, you know, it's a balance, and there are pros and cons with things. And again, I've always dealt very even-handedly with all the different bosses I've had over the years and the way my career has developed. So, you know, I don't know, that's kind of a wishy-washy answer maybe, but it's how I feel.
No, I think what's great about it being wishy-washy is that it's authentic and it's real, and you're saying that not everything is going to be perfect and there's no right answer to the decisions you make, and they could affect your life positively or negatively, but as long as you live in that moment and you make the right decisions for that moment, then that's going to bring you to where you are. And obviously, I mean, you're a testament to showing that, you know, some people can do it all as long as you find that balance and you make those decisions that might be hard at times, which I think a lot of people are finding themselves in day to day. So that's fantastic. Thank you. That definitely answered it. The next question I have is for Suzy. So one thing that you talked about was strengths of women and making sure that we're uplifting each other and holding ourselves maybe accountable, right? Other women, just to feel that. Now, do you think that men or women fall more victim to placing stereotypes on women in the workplace? Or do you think it's maybe equal? As we know that there are stereotypes present, right? They're much different from when Jeff's mother was working, but do you think that women or men are placing those stereotypes more aggressively on women?
I love that question. And I really think that the higher you go, the more you see women criticize you more. And so interesting, right? So that probably explained my passion for trying to help other women as well. So it shouldn't be the case. Unfortunately, at least as a reality I've seen too often. And I've been in many different workplaces or in the entrepreneur type of environment. I really think that when we're not in the competitive situation, we're the best buddy, we're best friends, right? We can hold hands, we'll go to shopping together, and we'll say whose shoes look better. But if we're in a more competitive scenario, I really think that women tend to be more critical, criticize each other. And I really think that is something that we ought to change. I would definitely starting from ourselves and say, this is how I chose not to do. And reach out and help others. And so it's not gonna happen overnight. I have a lot of a positive experience that I have a women mentor became a champion for me and lend a hand, pull me up, or became the one say, Suzy, you shouldn't do that. So I really think that those are so important pointers that I wish I got a lot earlier in my career. So I'm going to actually answer one of the questions that Doug asked in the chat box. And Doug says that I asked if how do I deal with people who are not accepting me as an equal? How do you deal with that? And obviously, there are people, not just men, women, but this case talk about people who are criticizing us, other women leaders, they're not necessarily accepting us. In my situation, I add another dimension that is my athletic background. So obviously I learned English 25 years ago, right? So English is also something I had to work on as a language too. And it was hard to answer your question directly, Doug, in the very beginning. Not the very, very beginning, because I was not aware of that. I was only aware of that I need to struggle my English, the language skill. I try to get the communication right. I didn't realize that until a colleague of mine came to me and say, Suzy, have you ever thought that it's successful is because you're people of color? And knowing that at the time, I did not know I was people of color. I did not know I was a person of color. And so that really shocked me for quite a long time. And I thanked her ever since, because it brought me the awareness that I did not have. So I really think awareness is the first step to do anything or make any changes at all. So what I learned is that I need to make it very clear, absolutely clear, that every single day I go to workplaces, I need to bring some positives to my workplace. I need to bring some value so people see what I have, what is about Suzy. It's not just this person of color, the skin tone. So that really fundamentally changed me. And in the subtle things that I also did was to start to communicate about the challenges that I face or my projects face. And that was really hard for me too, because complaining was not in my blood. To talk about things that I'm facing or challenges as if I don't know how to do it or I cannot do it. And it was actually the contrary. So I learned how to communicate the challenges I face, but I don't leave it there. I also talk about how I'm going to go about to overcome the challenges. So I really think that is absolutely critical. And the question about how do I work differently, it's I had to work harder and differently. So that is one of the way I want to leave my learning as well. So again, back to the focus on strength, I analyze myself all the time and continuously say, what is my strengths? Really is my critical thinking. It's my ability to solve problems. So I got to bring that to the workplace. And later then I earned a reputation to be that problem solver. I learned that I earned the reputation to be that leader in the crisis with cool head. So it's like when there's a crisis, call Suzy. I had to earn that reputation over the time. It did not happen overnight. So I think there's a related question, Doug, if I may, to ask you a third question about how do I view young women and men coming up, and what are my kind of 2 senses here. I would say, do not have entitlement. Don't feel like we're entitled to do something because we know so good. And remember, what we have to show for it. And we also have to work hard. We have to work for it. Just like you go to gym, how do you say, you want a big muscle? Work for it. So it just doesn't happen. It doesn't drop to our head, to our front, to our lap like that easy. I also want to say that achieving success is a journey, and embrace it and enjoy it. And this whole process is probably more fun getting the success than just get the success itself. I don't know how many of you experience the fact that when you actually got the trophy, you're like, is that it? What's next, right? So that means we have not enjoyed the journey enough, because the fun is actually in the journey. It's the fact that we're discussing all of this. It's about knowing ourselves, what do we bring to the table, and what are the reputation we have in the workplace, and how we can actually design our life, by the way, design the reputation we want and work for it, and continuously grow ourselves. And I cannot give you enough example of how many times I have to change trajectory of my journey and learn new skills. I have more certification skills ever you can imagine. But so kind of leave that and really just think about work for it. You got to work for it. You'll enjoy it.
What's great is that really ties into everything that Christina mentioned as well, which is great, because it's, that effort being put in is going to be recognized regardless of your gender, and hold yourself accountable and be aware of how you're treating other people. If you're a woman and you feel like you're being a little bit harsher on other women, or you're a man and you feel like you're being a little bit harsher on men or females, just try to keep that equality going, because that's the only way stereotypes are going to go away. That's the only way change is going to happen, is working for it, just like you work for your job, which I think is my overall takeaway from everything that Suzy just mentioned, which is great. I do have a question for Jeff as well. Having such an influential mother in your life, do you feel that women bring something very different to the workplace than men? And not to say anything better or anything, but do you as a man see something different that women are bringing to the workplace that maybe is different from when your mother was there?
Yes, there's definitely things that women bring to the workplace that are different, but I guess my comment on that would be, again, being raised in an environment where it was such a team effort, where she was focused on what she was good at. My dad was focused on what they were good at. They were playing against each other and with each other and off of each other and supporting each other. That you know, it's not, for me anyway, it's not that what women bring is like different. It's just realizing that we're all part of the same team and everybody brings something that's different. And to be focused on being aware of that skill set, so that you're not seeing it through the eyes of gender or color. You're just seeing it through the eyes of talent, of what people bring to the table, you know. So, and from my perspective, it really stripped the gender bias out to a huge extent, to the point where I don't see men or women. I just see people when I'm working with them, and are they the right tool for the job? You know, does that answer your question?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And we have a minute left, so I'm going to let Doug sign off, but thank you so much for that answer, Jeff. That was fantastic.
Oh, thank you, Erica. And thank you, everybody. I mean, that was a really great conversation. I wrote a list of takeaways. Christina talked about the sports and how to use sports in a variety of ways, which was really mind-opening. Jeff, your comments about strong men and women in your life and how that impacted you was very important, I think, for all of us, whether it's the workplace or whether it's our home. Lynn, I have, like, most of these notes are from you. The comments you made were incredibly powerful for a man, in your starting point on the don't assume, you know, the leaning forward. And for me, the key takeaway there was the differentiation of yourself versus your product. You know, so many of us walk into a situation and we think it's all about us, when it's really what you kept emphasizing, or at least what I kept hearing, was it's your work product. Focus in on your work product and differentiate, and don't make it personal. And so it took amazing strength and awareness that Suzy talked about for you to step forward and say, I'm she. and it must have been maybe frightening at the time. I don't know, since it was probably earlier in your career, and you do it probably without even thinking now. But that's such a powerful thing for people that honestly you have to learn. You have to be in a place. Suzy talked about becoming aware of these things. I had somebody, after living in Asia for years, I went back to the US and I gave a presentation that I thought was rock solid, and I was taken to the corner and I said, and they told me, you know, you're starting to become one of them. And I was like, one of them? What do you mean? So Suzy, in reverse of what you talked about. So awareness and having somebody within the organization and having a network that can give you the feedback, because we don't always see that, to be able to do that. So I really appreciate all of you, and thank you all. And Erica, particularly you, one of the speakers talked about, you know, not apologizing. So that's your work product. You should never apologize for who you are. You're an amazing person and you have some tremendous skills, and being organized is not something to definitely apologize for. Keep up the great work. And this is a great example of the work product that you bring, not just to Reesmarx, but to Global Chamber. And we really greatly appreciate it. I will say the last comments is, if this is one of your first activities with Global Chamber, I encourage you to be involved. We have a couple programs that are like this, in the sense of, if you're doing business, you're growing your business around the world. Two that I'm particularly looking forward to. We have these every week, multiple ones, but two I'm really looking forward to is on the 19th. We have 3 people talking about leadership and how to manage a global team, and how to have greater impact managing global teams. And that's one that all of us work with, whether it's a team that's within a state or within a country or within the world. We're trying to have more impact, trying to be more productive, trying to make a difference, trying to have a better work product. That Lynn talked about. So that's the 19th. And then the 27th is one that I come back to Lynn's point about how she stood up so strongly. 27th, we have experts talking about how to avoid conflicts and disputes in your international business. So in our careers, whether you're international or not, we run into disputes. And so what do you do? And sometimes we burn the building down. I've certainly done that and made it too personal and not thought well enough about how to step around disputes rather than step into the fire. We have a Global Chamber executive director who's lived in China for 20 years. He's an American. Actually, Suzy, he's there in northern Colorado, and he talks about the American way often is very confrontative. There's a problem, I'm gonna go solve it. I'm looking for problems, I'm solving every problem. And the Chinese way is water flowing down a hill goes around the problems, goes around the rocks, instead of trying to break them apart every time. And so those are key things I think that all of us need to learn as we advance our careers, whether it's international or not. And it's certainly very important on an international scale. So that's the 27th of August. Thank you everybody for all your time. Ericha, did you have any final comments?
No, I think the speakers covered everything. Thank you so much, Doug and Global Chamber, Cesar, for allowing Reesmarx to host this. I know I took a lot away, so just thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks everybody. Have a good rest of your day.
Thank
Take care.
you very
Thanks,
much.
Lynn. Thanks,
Thank you.
Suzy.
Bye.
Thanks, Jeff. Thanks, Christina. Bye-bye.